movie.
Do you have any other positives?
Oh yeah, I actually have a couple if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
And you can kind of bounce off them if you
Sure.
feel like you need to. One of them is I think that the structure of this movie is very like clever and well thought out. So they have it where it follows both their stories concurrently. And the two main characters only meet two or three times. I really love how it just built up, their training. It has them training, and then they eventually end up on the same Olympic team, and they end up in Paris. I think the structure was good. Like, they could have done it where it's like, they could have had more moments where they like meet up, and they could have had like more scenes with Little and Abrahams together, but I think it would have weakened the movie. I don't think they needed to be together in the movie to make it work. Because you have these two runners and these two very separate stories, and you have to run them concurrently, parallel, and they have to meet up at one point at the end. And I think they pulled it off pretty well, to me. And the screenplay, another positive in general, I mean, he won Best Original Screenplay for this, and it's a pretty solid screenplay. There is some really good dialogue in this movie, I feel like. A lot of great moving moments of, where you can really feel the emotion coming out. And once again, as I always say, the acting a screenplay is nothing without acting. The screenplay could be amazing, and the acting could be terrible. And the screenplay is obviously going to come off as terrible, because the acting is terrible. But here the acting is superb across the board for the most part, and so the screenplay comes across amazing. And also the screenplay in and of itself is cool. And my last big positive that I'll talk about, I might have a little small one come up later if it pops into my mind, but the last big one is just this movie is very inspiring and very it has some big emotional moments and some big moments that give you goosebumps. The score is part of that. The music just is part of why it happens. But there's the scenes where they race and stuff. They give me goosebumps. Some of them, most of them do actually. And yeah, they just there's several other moments, when Eric Little's talking about why he runs. I mean, that scene's very powerful to me. And this scene is just full of a lot of very powerful scenes to me. And that's a big positive. And it's very inspirational, You have and we'll talk about this in the theme section, but it's a movie that's ultimately about running, achieving victory through through courage and not breaking your convictions, holding true to yourself, and not succumbing to peer pressure in the case of Little, and then in the case of Abraham, running, like I said, moral courage, using moral courage and fortitude to achieve victory against all odds. They're both the underdogs in all these races once they get to the Olympics, but they both win, and they both get to the top. And finally, one other part, I love how the movie has the scenes. I love how Little, and I love the character growth for Abrahams, because I saw it, and because you said you didn't see it as much. I saw a little bit at the end. I mean, he's arrogant pretty much for the whole movie and stuff, but at the end, you feel like after he wins the race, he kind of feels like this sense of accomplishment, and he realizes, you can kind of see it in his face, and he realizes, it seems that it feels to me like he realizes that he sacrificed too much, in that final, in achieving his goal. I feel in that final scene with him and Musabini eating, drinking beer at the pub, I felt that to me. It felt like in his face, you could just see, he's like, man, I've sacrificed so much just to do this. I might have sacrificed even too much. And then obviously Little has just a great overall storyline. Little's out of the two. I don't know about you, but wouldn't you agree? I think you said you agree. Little's storyline is more compelling to me.
Little's is better.
Abraham's is great. They're both great, and they run concurrently. But anyway, so those are my big positives. I really love this movie. It's a great movie.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into the negatives. Are you ready? Have a little bit more negatives than you.
I have one big one.
You have one big one?
And maybe a couple more.
And I think my opinion on this is going to temper yours a little bit, just like we did with Pearl Harbor, because you were a little bit more negative on that one. I was a little bit more positive on that one. Yeah. And I did enjoy this movie, but I thought of a good way to describe how I feel about it. Yeah, this is a good description. I feel like this is like a Mona Lisa of a movie where you can go see it and definitely appreciate the artistic integrity and the value of what you're seeing. But at the same time, you're not going to go stare at the Mona Lisa for 3 hours straight. It's not super exciting. It's a piece of art, and it's a classic. But having said that, there are parts about it that I do not particularly enjoy. The first thing that I don't like, and John is going to disagree with me on this, I really don't like Ben Cross's character really at all. I can't remember what his name is. Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
Just remember Abraham from the Bible.
Abraham's, yeah. So Abraham's, the whole idea is that he feels discriminated against because he's Jewish, and to prove himself, he's going to go run. But there's problems with this, in my opinion. The first problem is that it never shows us the discrimination, and so he spends a lot of time complaining about it. But it would be a lot better if the movie showed us what happened to him.
I agree,
because we're left. It makes him feel really whiny.
Yeah. I feel like it was implied more than shown. There's a couple scenes, you can tell, there's two scenes to me where they tried to show it. The first is when he arrives at Cambridge and the guy that's gives him his dorm key is very clearly does not like Jewish people. He's at the end he's he sure won't be in the school choir. And, and then the second scene of kind of where they try to show anti-Semitism is really a few scenes when he's talking with the masters of the college.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Those guys are very subtly anti-Semitic. You can kind of get that vibe. But I think they definitely should have emphasized it.
They should have emphasized it more because he comes off as whiny. And that didn't have to be the case if they just showed us what was wrong.
Because in real life, he did feel that's accurate to his character. He did feel discriminated.
And I don't doubt it, but they didn't show it to us, and so he just ended up. There's a rule when it comes to storytelling that is talked about a lot. Show don't tell.
Okay.
Show don't tell. So when you just tell people that a character is amazing or a character is discriminated against, we don't believe you. If you show us, we'll believe you. They didn't show us, they told us. And so he was sitting there in that scene with his girlfriend and complaining about it. And I was just I don't know, man. Just shut up. I mean, I didn't like that very much.
Sorry.
No,
I just wanted to, since you're talking about something that has to do with screenplay, what's your overall analysis of the screenplay? Being more of a writing
I like the screenplay. It's good. There are issues with it, and I'll get to it later, but overall, certainly it's better than Alexander. It is good. But to get back to what I was saying, the second thing that doesn't make sense with him is why he picks running to be the thing that justifies his existence. And it's not that that's a bad choice, it's that it never tells us why. Specifically, he thinks running will do that. And
yeah, that's true.
A way you could have fixed this is you could have had a character or characters who were being blatantly anti-Semitic to him, who were in Oxford, it was Cambridge. In the Cambridge thing, and then you could have had them also be really invested in the athletics, in the success of the running team. And so he's going to think, I'm going to prove these guys wrong. I'm going to get on their running team that they're so hyped up about, and I'm going to push it to success. And then at the end of the movie, have those people change their mind. You see what I'm saying? And then he gains his acceptance, and then he goes back to Cambridge as a hero. I think
my counterpoint to that's the first argument I would agree with, actually. They should have emphasized the anti-Semitism more. The second one, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, in real life, he had been running his whole life.
Okay.
It wasn't something I don't think that he just chose to do once he got to Cambridge. Mm-hmm. So,
if that's the case,
he had been running, and
So you're saying there's a separate reason that he was running other than proving himself? He had multiple.
I assume so. Yeah, they obviously chose to go for that.
What I'm saying is, if there was other reasons, then they need to tell us that. Okay. And I would be fine with that. I think if they could have restructured his plot a little bit, and it would have made more sense. With and the way that they had it, he just came off as really a spoiled brat kind of, and just really he's such a prick, and I just didn't like him the whole movie. Especially when he's his dad is rich, he's going to freaking Cambridge, he's running in the Olympics, and this whole time he's crying about getting discriminated against, and it's bro, look around, you are not getting discriminated against. And
they could have shown it more for sure.
Yeah,
but I do feel like when it comes to him being unlikable, he was gonna always kind of be unlikable. Like, even if they emphasized the anti-Semitism more, he still would have been complaining about it. That's just part of his character.
It is.
So I feel like he was supposed to
but
be
it would
unlikable.
justify the complaint.
Yeah.
Like, you would sit there and you'd be like, oh, I relate. You know, I would complain too.
But he could still obviously be a little bit unlikable.
But when nothing happens to somebody and then they turn around and complain...
Nothing direct ever happens to him.
Yeah, nothing direct. And you just sit there and you cannot help but be like, dude, it's so funny because his girlfriend tells him this. She's like, grow up, bro. Yeah. Just grow up. Because I
like that aspect of it, how they do have characters to, tell him.
You gotta tell him, just like, shake it off. Yeah. Get up. Like, you can't just keep blaming the world. He blames the world for his problems. And I think, and it's contrasted so well by Eric Liddell, who has all of these issues, and he doesn't complain. Yeah. He doesn't complain.
He comes from a poor, a less, affluent family.
Yes, he does. Yeah. And that's why I like his
I'd like for you to, speaking of Eric Liddell's storyline, compare that. Like, analyze that one a little bit for us.
Yeah,
like,
so Eric...
And how it was more effective.
It was more effective because Eric Liddell, he comes up against resistance that it actually shows us. Like, it shows us how disapproving his family is. They want him to be in China, being a missionary. His sister.
The dad's kind of okay with it. He's like, run for the glory of God. His sister's like, no.
That's right. And Eric deals with it in a much more heroic manner. Like, he tells her firmly but kindly that this is what he's going to be doing. Yeah. And then he doesn't complain.
And he gives his reasoning.
And
you understand his reasoning because you've watched his character throughout the movie. Yeah. And you know that he's this man of strong conviction and of strong faith.
Even better is that there's emotional payoff because at the end of the movie, his sister comes to watch him in the Olympics.
And that scene, that's one of those scenes that I was talking about that gives me goosebumps, is when his sister's there and it's doing that voiceover of him telling her why he runs.
And it works a lot better. Man. Like, they should have done that for, I keep forgetting this guy's, Abraham's. They should have done it for Abraham's had whoever was anti-Semitic, show them being impressed or whatever.
I guess it kind of... for clarity, the headmaster guys, there's a scene where he's like, they see that he won in the paper.
And they're like, oh, he won.
I always expected it, or something that line was weird.
That line should have been there because that cut off the emotional payoff.
Yeah, it should have been them just in silence. I feel like would have been more effective.
Or anything, or just like, maybe we were wrong about him, or something like that.
Yeah. Those guys are also always sitting. This is just a little observation. They're all every scene. They're at the same table.
It's like 4 months past and they're still having.
It's like the Master of Trinity and then the Master of Keys, and they're always at the same table.
Yeah, and then to move on from that a little bit, you heard my spiel on that. The cinematography was generally good. Okay. I'm moving on to the next. Okay. I almost said harm again. The next negative. Yeah. But there were times where there were shots that were like did not make sense and were weird. Like, me and John were talking about this, like the training sequence.
Yeah, the training scenes were a bit
It's like sometimes. They would get too close sometimes. It would go too long with, like, there was this one that I thought was so funny where this guy was just going like, and he was like doing this stretching thing, and he does that for like 15 seconds, and you're sitting there and you're like, what is this for? There's just kind of bizarre moments like that with the. Do you agree with that?
To give my thoughts though on the overall cinematography, there were definitely some weird moments. Yeah, there were some weird shots. Generally, there were some weird scene. Yeah, generally it was good. There were some weird scene transitions. Just like there were some odd, just very sudden transitions where you go from one scene of like high energy to like a very like a scene where they're singing or something. Or like in an opera watching them and watching that who becomes his girlfriend sing. And there's just some weird transitions throughout the movie. I can't think of a specific one, but overall the cinematography honestly was above par. It was good. It was probably a 7 out of 10 to me. The cinematography, because I really enjoyed specifically the cinematography during the running scenes. I really enjoyed how I mentioned this to you last night when I was talking to you about what was going to be one of my positives. In the running scenes, it shows them. It'll show it real quick. It'll show like them just running, and it's like in normal speed. Then several times at least it does this. Then it goes back and shows it to you in slow mo. And it's first of all the cinematography is amazing. It's just cool to see these guys running and like seeing how it's a matter of inches, like how close ahead they are of how much ahead they are of the guy behind them. And it's really cool for that aspect. But also it's cool because that's how I feel like a runner would be thinking about it. You know, whether it's the 400 meter, 200 meter, 100 meter, they train for this, like, you know, at most 45 seconds of running. They train for years for this. And then they do it, and it's over like that. Like, Harold Abrahams has a great scene where he's getting a massage from his trainer. And
that's one of the weird scenes.
Okay.
That I was like...
But talk about let me finish, and then you can talk about it. So he's talking to his friend, Aubrey Montague, and he's basically saying, you know, I have 10 seconds. I've been training all this time for 10 seconds to justify my existence. And he's not wrong. Like, it is really 10 seconds with the 100 meters. And in that scene, he runs. You see it in real time, like I said. Then it goes back and shows it in slow-mo. And it feels like that's how the runners would be thinking about it. Because it's like they're going back and dwelling on that 10 seconds. Like, it went by like a blur, and then they think about it.
Yeah.
And especially, it's really effective in the scene where Little beats Abrahams earlier in the movie. And Abrahams is just sitting there in the stands, and he just can't get over it. Yeah. And he's having it just being replayed in his mind with that amazing soundtrack, amazing music being played. And that's the racing scenes, the cinematography in those was phenomenal to me. And but yeah, you could talk about that weird scene.
Yeah, so that was one of the
ones. It wasn't an overall weird scene, it was just the setup.
It was bizarre because like it's supposed to be this really important dialogue he's giving, and then just the whole time he got this old dude just like rubbing his back, like
it's his trainer.
His trainer, he's doing it like so vigorously that it like steals away the attention. Like
the dialogue was really great in that scene,
and he's like all oiled up. And the other thing is like he's rubbing his back, and I'm like, you're a runner. Why do you need to have your back massaged?
It's supposed to be in between his two. It's supposed to be in between the one race he loses and then the one that he ends up winning.
And then the really dumb part for me is that halfway through giving this important spiel to, I forget who he was talking to.
His friend Aubrey.
It's his friend Aubrey. And you know how like when you're getting a massage, like I'm not like... On a massage table, usually, like, there's this... I don't know how I'm talking about this.
I've never received a professional massage. You have.
Yes, I have. So, as the expert here, I
can explain your aunt.
Usually, they have, like, a pillow like this so you can put your head down, but they didn't have it, so he had to have his head to the side. And so, I guess his neck, like, started hurting. So, halfway through this important dialogue, he turns his head, and it is talking to the opposite wall.
Okay.
And it's like, bro, like, what? Yeah. Like... Why would you have that in the movie? He's now having this super important personal moment with his friend, and he's looking in the opposite direction. And it's like, bro, like, I know your neck hurts, but just like, look in this.
Because the dialogue is good. It's a really moving, like, what he's talking about. He's talking about how he's had to sacrifice all this and how he thinks he might have sacrificed too much, and like, how, you know, he's having this is he's talking about his whole idea around his character, how he's trying to justify his existence.
It's a heavy moment, and you need that eye contact.
Yeah.
And he's just like halfway through, just unexpectedly, he's like, and he's looking in the other direction, and then the guys are there like massaging him, and it's like it doesn't work. It's really weird.
The massage part of it was kind of odd.
It's not even that he was massaging him. It's just, first of all, it was the guy was doing it like it was. Like I said, there was the details about it that was just made it kind of weird.
Okay.
Like him looking in the opposite direction while
it was only one of a few. There wasn't that many moments that were too uncomfortable.
No,
that wasn't even uncomfortable.
No, it wasn't. It was normal because he's like an athlete.
Yeah,
this was his trainer. But like I said, it was the details of the scene. The fact that he was rubbing his back didn't make any sense. Yeah. The fact that he was looking in the opposite direction didn't make any sense. Okay. The guy was like rubbing him so vigorously that it was stealing the attention away from the important moment. Yeah. So he's like trying to act really well, and all the whole time the guy's like.
Speaking of his friend Aubrey in that scene, who's his fellow Cambridge student, fellow Cambridge student. This goes back to the structure of the movie. I just thought I'd mention this. I really enjoyed how they used his journals to kind of set certain scenes up. That was a really cool choice to use. And from what I've read, the screenwriter actually he put out like an ad or something in the paper saying, "Hey, I'm writing this I'm working on the screenplay. If anybody can send me, original documents and stuff from any of these people." And the son of Aubrey Montague sent him his journals, and that's how he got those. So that's actually real. That's what that guy wrote.
That's really
cool. So that's really cool. And the screenwriter uses those journals to set up certain scenes, and it works really well.
It does.
And from this, it's because it's kind of from this guy who's not the main character. He's just one of their friends, but it's setting up the scene, and it's really well done. And so I just thought I'd mention that. But another, you want to go with my negative?
Yeah, go with
my
big
negative. I think you'll agree with this.
I only have one more after this.
Well, my big one is the pacing is a bit off at times.
Yeah, I agree.
Was that what yours was?
No, that's not what it was.
This one's really my only big one. I mean, I have a couple other nitpicks, and I agree with what some of you said. Some of what you said. But I feel like the pacing, it's not terrible. Like it's not overly long.
No.
I feel like it's only 2 hours. It's the proper length. It's more just that sometimes, specifically at the beginning, okay, it takes a minute to get started.
Yeah.
It takes a minute for them to go through all the Cambridge introductions and figure you're learning who these characters are.
It's so British.
And then it picks up. Yeah, those first few scenes are very British. I mean, the whole movie's very British, but those first few scenes especially. But it picks up once you get to Eric Liddell. Mm-hmm. Once you get once it goes to the Highlands of Scotland, 1920. That's when the movie picks up, and from there it moves at a pretty good pace until I'd say there's the scene where Abrahams is talking to. It slows down kind of to a halt after the race between Liddell and Abrahams, and after Liddell talks to his sister about why he runs. It kind of slows down from that point until they go to the Olympics.
I agree, yeah.
And the pacing was moving so good. It was moving at a good pace, and it just slows to a kind of a halt almost. And there's some good scenes in there. Like there's a great scene where he's talking to the masters of the colleges, and they don't want him to have a professional coach because he's an amateur.
Yeah.
And which is true. That's factual. That would have been what they believed back then. That was like very taboo.
And that's the other thing. Like when I was talking about the lack of anti-Semitism, like they decided to make their criticism about this other thing instead of the thing that he's supposed to be.
For sure, yeah.
Like
the anti-Semitism, just as a final thing to sum it up, and I think it kind of goes with what you're saying. It was too. They shouldn't have implied as much. They should have shown more.
Yes.
They tried to imply it without showing it. Anyway, but that scene was great, but it's a very slow scene, and where it is in the movie, it kind of just slows the movie down, because it's a longer scene. It's probably like 8 minutes.
Yeah. And
it's a great scene, but it just, where it is in the movie, it makes the movie, it kind of just kills the pace of the movie.
It does.
And while still being a pretty good scene. So yeah, the pacing of the movie just can be kind of a little bit off at times. Not terrible. I'd probably say the pacing of the movie I'd rate it about 6.5 out of 10. It's just at times it can be off.
Yes.
And it is a British movie, and that feels to be a very common theme with British movies.
Yeah. But I like Darkest Tower a lot better than this.
Oh, yeah. That's a newer British movie, though.
It is. But it just... It's better.
It was better. Yeah.
Last negative I've got for this is that they should have done... The screenwriter should have done a better job ratcheting the tension and giving us stakes.
I get that.
Because, especially just throughout the movie when they're running these races... Yeah. It's hard to see what's at stake exactly, and especially also at the Olympics when they're running these races, it's just like if they can win. There's no like. Let me give you a counterexample to how this has been done better. So there's a movie that came out recently based on a book called Boys in the Boat.
That was a good movie.
It was a great movie, but it was also about an Olympic team.
We have to review that. That'd be a good movie.
Yes, it's good, and so but this movie. It ratchets up the tension, and it does this because the main character is in a bad financial situation, and his only way that he can get through college and make a life for himself is if he makes this team. And so right off the bat, we have a reason to be invested, and if he fails, something bad's going to happen. And so that draws you in. And then even when they get later to the Olympics, they keep the tension up because this is in the 1930s and the Nazi Germany team is trying to show how superior they are. And you're not sure if there's going to be cheating going on, and the other dudes are so much older and they've been rowing longer.
They have a black guy that's running for the Americans.
And then one of the dudes...
Not getting too much into that movie.
One of the dudes... I'm talking about the other movie right now.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was saying there's Jesse Owens, the black guy is running for America.
No, I'm talking about the Boys in the Boat.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it alludes to the fact that there was the black guy that ended up winning all the races.
Oh, yeah, it does allude to that fact. But what I'm talking about, like, as far as the main plot of the movie is one of their best rowers gets sick.
Yeah.
And so they're having to row against the Nazis. Freaking Hitler's standing right there watching, and their best dude is sick. And you don't know if he's going to, pass out halfway. And so there's, all this tension going on. And with Chariots of Fire, none of this is present. It's just like, are they going to win the race? And if they don't, nothing happens. I mean, the only thing that you could say, because especially with, like, I love Eric Little's timeline, but he doesn't have anything at stake with the races. The only thing that he has at stake is when he refuses to run on Sunday.
So that's what I was. Go ahead and finish making talking.
Yeah.
I have a counter.
And that's a good part of the movie because there's stakes there, there's tension there, there's conflict there. It's much more interesting than the actual race that happens because you kind of, and it's a good scene, it's filmed really well, but then he wins and you're like, oh, he won. Yeah. And this happens with Ben Cross's character, cannot remember his name, Abrahams. He just kind of wins the race, he wins the race, and you're like, okay, he did that, that's cool. Even if he would have lost, I mean, he cares a lot about it, but we don't care a lot about it. If he loses, we just know he's going to have another whiny meltdown.
His race could have been more meaningful if we had if they had, I think, like we've said, emphasized the anti-Semitism.
Yes, and they needed to have more at stake for both characters in order to bring up the tension so that we were invested when the races happened. Yeah.
So here's my counterpoint to that. I do agree that there could have been a little bit more tension around the individual races. My argument, though, would be, like you said, a lot of the tension is more, it's more focused around the situations and the runners' lives. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the movie was going for that type of tension. For instance, with Little, he won't run on Sunday. He has that conviction.
Yeah, that's one of the best
parts. And that's the tension around him. And by winning that race, he shows that